Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are diving into a text that is, honestly, so provocative, it basically challenges the entire foundation of modern science. If you've ever felt like our progress in fields like artificial intelligence or theoretical physics or even math has just hit a brick wall, well, you're definitely not alone. The source text we're exploring today claims exactly that, and it proposes a massive paradigm shift to fix it. It introduces this fascinating concept of wrong-think versus right-think, completely deconstructing what we currently accept as absolute scientific truth.
Okay, here's our roadmap. We are going to map out the author's radical deconstruction of modern scientific dogma across these 5 core areas, starting with the crisis of dogma, moving into the myths surrounding AI, tackling the flaws in modern physics, the end of infinity, and finally, the proposed path forward. Let's get right into it.
Section 1, the crisis of dogma, and this concept of terminal stagnation.
To kick things off, we really need to grasp the sheer scale of the problem the author is pointing out. We aren't just experiencing a little slowdown in discovery, we're facing a systemic failure across all the formal sciences. The author uses this incredible sense of urgency, stating point blank, the advancement of human understanding has reached a state of terminal stagnation. We aren't stuck just because the problems are difficult. We're stuck because of deeply ingrained wrongthink that is literally metastasized across math and physics. Basically, we are actively defending legacy errors instead of looking for the truth.
So the text sets up this really stark contrast. On one side, we have wrong-think. This is the mainstream assertion that current physics accurately describes reality, that quantum mechanics and general relativity can somehow be perfectly unified, and that the universe is just this discrete, pixelated construct. The author says, no, these are fundamentally flawed. On the flip side, we have right-think, which demands a radical excision of all these dogmas. It requires us to pivot entirely, acknowledge a continuous reality, and accept that we need an entirely new physics. It's basically a call to wipe the slate completely clean.
Moving right along to Section 2, the AI intelligence myth, which the author calls a major strategic error.
Looking at our first specific discipline, the text argues that we have made a profound, fundamental error. The whole contemporary conversation around artificial intelligence, the author describes it as a masterclass in conceptual confusion. We've essentially mistaken a bunch of complex logic gates for actual living sentience. The author insists that drawing a hard line between a man-made tool and a sentient entity isn't just arguing over semantics, it's absolutely crucial for scientific clarity. When we slap the word intelligence onto AI, we're committing a category error. We're mislabeling the tool, which just leads to this massive misallocation of resources and focus.
What's really fascinating here is how systematically the author tears down this AI myth. They propose a vital correction. We absolutely have to view AI purely as a functional tool, one that is governed by fixed man-made constraints. Sure, these systems can have autonomous growth, but using words like cognitive here, no way. By dropping the idea that AI will ever mirror human consciousness, we wipe out that anthropomorphic bias. This shift completely eliminates all the metaphysical speculation and gets us back to focusing on deterministic precision. If we stop wasting time treating these algorithms as living creatures, we can actually unlock their raw functional power.
All right, Section 3, flaws in modern physics and a failed mandate.
If you thought the take on AI was intense, wait until we get into theoretical physics. This is a total paradigm breaker. The author argues that modern physics has completely failed its primary mandate, which is to describe reality as it actually exists. I mean, we've spent decades trying to unify quantum mechanics and general relativity, right? Well, the text calls this a persistent, desperate, and ultimately failed attempt, because those two frameworks are built on totally incompatible assumptions. The big takeaway here is that QM and GR aren't true models just waiting for a magical bridge to connect them. They're proxies. They are just mathematical placeholders that we've stubbornly confused for the actual physical territory.
And that brings us to the very root of the physics problem. The author states that the red thread running through all our scientific failures is this stubborn refusal to accept an unbroken, continuous physical reality. By looking at the universe as quantized or pixelated, basically treating reality like it's a giant digital machine, we totally ignore the seamless nature of the underlying physical continuum. We're constantly trying to shove a continuous universe into tiny, discrete, pixelated boxes. And that, according to the text, is exactly why our current models have hit that wall of terminal stagnation.
So how do we get out of this mess?
The source mandates a completely new physics, not just tweaking old theories, but building a foundational departure based on two very distinct layers of description. Step 1. We have to investigate the real object, meaning the unbroken, continuous reality exactly as it is. Step 2. We investigate our inferred distinctions. That's how we, as observers, are forced by our own nature to describe that continuous universe using discrete terms. By clearly separating actual reality from our discrete mathematical descriptions of it, we can actually start building models that work. Next up, Section 4, the end of infinity, or math's crisis.
Okay, get ready, because your mathematical worldview is about to be completely shaken up. The text points to an ontological crisis in math by looking incredibly closely at numbers themselves. Take a second and ask yourself, can you always add 1 to a number? If you've taken even basic math, modern mathematics tells you the answer is an obvious, resounding yes. It's the whole basis of how we count. But the source text argues that this assumes a massive fallacy of infinite recursion and circular logic.
So what's the author's answer? It's a hard no. We are operating under a totally naive assumption. The operation of adding 1 is a functional operation of magnitude, right? And the text argues it is only valid within a very narrow, manageable, and strictly finite scale. As we push out toward the very limits of what's countable, we hit a hard ontological shift.
This ontological shift requires a brand new framework. Think of it like this. A number exists within a manageable scale. You can identify it, compare it, and sure, you can add 1 to it. But eventually, numbers get too large to actually function as numbers. Once you cross this certain yet uncertain threshold, numbers essentially cease to exist. You enter a realm where you are no longer dealing with numbers, but with symbols. These symbols represent states, not magnitudes. Because of that, standard arithmetic completely breaks down. You can add 1 to a number, for sure, but you absolutely cannot add 1 to a symbol.
And because of this symbol threshold, the text argues that we have to entirely throw out the concept of infinity. It's bold, but within this rigorous framework, the author states it plainly. Infinity does not exist. Sure, we use it symbolically for approximation, but it is not a real limit. It's not a reachable entity. By treating infinity as a real, tangible thing, math has introduced what the text calls false infinities. These just muddy up our equations, and most importantly, they offer zero descriptive value for a universe that is continuous, yet finite. Finally, Section 5, the path forward, and the clear mandate for science. So, after completely tearing down the way we view AI, theoretical physics, and literally the concept of infinity, how do we actually get unstuck? The author's mandate couldn't be clearer. This terminal stagnation we're in, it's a choice. We are actively choosing to defend flawed models. To move forward, we have to immediately abandon these wrong-think dogmas. We need to prioritize active, honest, empirical investigation rather than just guarding the legacy errors of the 20th century. In practical terms, that means we start investigating the true continuous nature of reality instead of forcing it into pixels, and we start exploring this new mathematical symbol threshold instead of relying on the mirage of infinity.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with the text's ultimate provocative challenge. Are we brave enough to let go of our most comfortable scientific myths? The myth that machines can think, the myth that our current physics actually maps reality, and the myth that infinity is a real thing. The path to the future demands that we start entirely fresh. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I will catch you next time.